what's your name?
Well, my name is Jim, but most people call me Jim.
Gene Wilder finally reveals what most fans never figure out about Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles can be summed up in 3 words: dare to break rules. The 1974 film was not only a box office explosion, but also a landmark in American cinema history, daring to push past every limit of comedy, satire, and creative freedom. Few know that the behind-the-scenes world of Blazing Saddles was packed with secrets. Gene Wilder, the star of this masterpiece, once shared many little-known stories about it, from harrowing filming incidents that nearly sank the production to the director's outrageous decisions, such as stuffing towels into actors' mouths, along with countless other shocking moments. So, what happened behind the camera? And the 5th thing on this list might just make it impossible for you ever to watch the film the same way again. Wilder's rescue mission. The disastrous pre-shoot incident and Wilder's rescue mission. When Mel Brooks set out to film Blazing Saddles, the role of Waco Kid had already been given to Gig Young, a seasoned Hollywood veteran and Oscar winner. At that time, Gig Young was the perfect choice: fame, experience, and the world-weary aura of an old gunslinger the film needed. But as soon as the camera started rolling, something terrifying happened. On the very first day of shooting, Gig Young began sweating profusely and stammering. At first, the crew thought he was deep in character, but the truth quickly came out. He was suffering from acute alcohol withdrawal. By mid-morning, Young collapsed. Camera stopped. The entire set went into red alert. There was no time for an audition, no chance to negotiate a new contract. Director Mel Brooks had only one option left: call the man he trusted most, Gene Wilder. The call lasted just a few sentences. Wilder didn't care about the script, the pay, or even which role it was. He simply said, "One thing, I'll be there." Less than 24 hours later, Wilder was on set. No rehearsals, no preparation. He stepped straight into Waco Kid as if he'd known the character all his life. The result was astonishing. Wilder not only pulled the film back from the brink of collapse, he completely redefined Waco Kid. Under his masterful transformation, the character became an icon of ruthless satire, perfectly reflecting the chaos of the times, and it all began with a single phone call. After agreeing to join Blazing Saddles, Gene Wilder set only one condition: Waco Kid would not be played for laughs. In a movie fueled by absurdity and nonsense, Wilder chose the opposite path. He turned Waco Kid into a brooding, melancholy shadow while the rest of the film bathed in comedy. Director Mel Brooks called the character the backbone of the entire movie. While Hedley Lamar and the other characters pushed the absurdity to its limits, Wilder stood as a ghost of the Old West, weary, delivering lines as dry and cold as ice. For example, when lazily lying on the top bunk in a jail cell, Waco Kid introduces himself in a flat, half-asleep tone. Instead of making it a cheap gag, Wilder turned the moment into a tragic beat that made audiences laugh in a strangely haunted way. This was no spur-of-the-moment choice. It was a master stroke of strategy. Wilder understood that in comedy, contrast is the ultimate weapon. To make jokes sharp, you need silence. To push madness to its peak, you need a still, unmoving eye of the storm. Waco Kid was that eye. In truth, it was an extremely risky decision. In most films, such a somber role would have been swallowed whole by louder personalities. But Wilder was a master, calculating every expression, even counting beats between words. And the result, no one could have predicted that a serious character would become the funniest highlight of the entire movie. That was the moment Wilder flipped the script, saving the film from spiraling into chaos. And once you understand how he made Waco Kid the center of it all, you'll be even more curious about the unexpected behind-the-scenes stories hiding in this character's shadow. The mystery behind Waco Kid. Waco Kid wasn't just a funny character. He was a legend. Once an infallible sharpshooter, now hollowed out by alcohol, exhaustion, and disillusionment with the world. Behind the drooping eyes, the crooked smirk, and the seemingly careless remarks was a broken soul, a heart shattered by loneliness. While other characters dove headfirst into satire, Gene Wilder took a completely different route. He turned the tremble in Waco Kid's hand, the heavy sighs, and a vacant stare into the deep scars of psychological trauma after a lifetime of violence and loss. A prime example, when he tells of once being the fastest gun in the West, his voice carries no pride. Instead, it sounds like a painful confession of a past he can never escape. Why create a character like that? Wilder understood one truth. The funniest characters are often the ones who suffer the most. Waco Kid's pain never erupts. It smolders throughout the entire film. The unanswered questions about his past linger like a ghost in the viewer's mind, making them wonder how a legendary gunslinger could have fallen so far. It was a daring acting choice, especially in the 1970s when comedy thrived on noise and exaggeration. Yet Wilder proved that silence and melancholy could evoke laughter and touch the audience's heart in an entirely different way. This was Wilder's philosophy of acting. No mugging, no overplaying, no begging for laughs. He trusted that the audience was smart enough to find humor in the raw truth of a character. And so, in a film built on absurdity, Waco Kid remains its greatest tragedy, a trembling hand, a weary gaze, and a heartbreaking mystery with no answer. But while Wilder saved the entire movie through his calm presence, behind the scenes, Blazing Saddles nearly didn't make it to the screen. The film almost collapsed under studio pressure. Warner Brothers relentlessly pressured director Mel Brooks to cut dialogue deemed too sensitive and even threatened to shut down production. The script became a target for aggressive censorship. Scenes dealing with racism or political satire were at the heart of fierce disputes, putting the film on a knife's edge. The cast and crew endured grueling 12 to 14-hour days, compounded by Brooks's perfectionism that demanded multiple reshoots. Every time Brooks changed his mind, the entire set had to adjust lighting and cameras and costumes, ratcheting up the tension to breaking point. In the middle of this chaos, Gene Wilder quietly became the anchor. While Brooks directed with explosive energy and spontaneity, Wilder took the opposite approach. He rarely raised his voice or sought attention, but whenever he stepped in, the set seemed to gain a stabilizing force. Between long takes, Wilder discreetly coached younger actors, teaching them how to pause, how to emphasize, so every punchline would land. His gestures were subtle but powerful, a nod, a gentle reminder, a look of encouragement. These small, seemingly insignificant acts shaped the rhythm of the film in profound ways. Crew members recalled Wilder as an unofficial emotional director, quietly steering the film away from chaos. Without him, Blazing Saddles might never have become one of the greatest comedies ever made. Then, while the team was still wrestling with studio pressure, Wilder had an unexpected idea. During a break, he pulled Brooks aside and whispered, "Life, do you hear it? Give me my creativity." That whisper became the seed for Young Frankenstein, another cinematic masterpiece. To make such masterpieces happen, Wilder needed more than just a spark. He needed a dream team. But just when everything seemed ready, a sudden twist threw the project to the brink of collapse right before filming began. Richard Pryor. Before Blazing Saddles could explode onto theater screens, the name Richard Pryor was already tied to the project. Pryor was the original choice to play Sheriff Bart. Mel Brooks knew that Pryor's raw humor and boldness could make the role legendary. But Hollywood doesn't always favor talent first. While Pryor poured himself into the script with razor-sharp commentary on race and power, Warner Brothers executives grew nervous. Fearing scandals and knowing Pryor was battling substance abuse, they made a cold decision. One source even revealed Pryor had lost control during a drug high, once showing up in an incoherent state, further fueling the studio's reluctance to give him the lead role. When Pryor was out, Cleavon Little officially took over as Sheriff Bart. Though Little delivered a charming performance, many couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, that Pryor could have elevated the role to iconic status. The truth was more complex. Brooks later admitted he had already abandoned the idea of casting Pryor, with the studio using insurance as an excuse to formalize the decision. Michael Schultz, a longtime collaborator of Pryor, offered a harsher take. Richard wrote the script and Mel Brooks fired him. Even off-screen, Pryor's presence was undeniable. Every line, every satirical beat of Sheriff Bart still carried Pryor's uncompromising edge. It's a cruel irony. An actor who shaped an entire film without ever appearing in it. Pryor achieved exactly that. Blazing Saddles is a masterpiece, but its perfect version, where Wilder and Pryor unleashed madness together, will forever remain one of Hollywood's great what-ifs. And the strangeness didn't stop there. The set soon faced another problem from within, forcing Brooks to devise an outlandish solution just to keep the cast working. Chaos. The crew laughed so hard the director made them stuff towels in their mouths. Gene Wilder's performance in Blazing Saddles was calm to the point of being unnerving. But behind the camera, chaos reigned. Many of his most brilliant moments nearly got cut, not because he acted poorly, but because the entire set was laughing too hard to continue shooting. With his knack for delivering unexpected lines in a feather-like tone that hit comedy's sweet spot, Wilder kept breaking the set. The laughter grew so loud that Brooks sometimes had to leave the room to keep it from being picked up on the final audio track. To stop laughter sabotage, Brooks came up with a bizarre yet effective tactic. He handed out white handkerchiefs to the crew. Anyone who felt a laugh coming had to shove the cloth into their mouth. If Brooks saw a sea of twitching white cloths, he knew the scene was going well. One of the most memorable moments was when Waco Kid encouraged Bart. You've got to remember, these are just simple farmers, people of the land, the common clay of the New West, morons. This wasn't in the script. It was Wilder's spontaneous wit. It made Clean Little and the entire crew dissolve into uncontrollable laughter. The offbeat rhythm, unexpected yet utterly sincere, gave Blazing Saddles its strange warmth. Sadly, many other brilliant moments never reached audiences. According to DVD commentary and film blogs, scenes exploring Waco Kid's backstory and pain were cut to keep the pacing fast and the comedy relentless. It makes you wonder, had those scenes stayed, how much deeper could Waco Kid have been? Would the film have slowed or reached an emotional depth few comedies ever achieve? In a movie filled with buzz and chaos, there were moments you couldn't hear at all because the crew was simply having too much fun. Yet, behind the endless laughter, Gene Wilder was quietly on a far more serious mission to protect the soul of the film by any extreme measure necessary. Music Protect the Script 6. Gene Wilder fought to protect the script even against Hollywood. When Warner Brothers panicked over the film's profanity and sharp racial satire, they demanded numerous cuts, trying to dull the movie's edge. But Wilder's answer was an unequivocal no. He wasn't the director or producer. Yet, he stood by Mel Brooks from the beginning. His stance was clear. Don't back down. Don't compromise. Don't let them take away the reason this movie exists. In private meetings, Wilder constantly encouraged Brooks to maintain the film's edgy, satirical tone, even when the studio hinted at withdrawing their support. He understood the risks, but believed that comedy must make an audience uncomfortable to expose a dirty truth. Without its sharp edges, the film would become just another easy laugh. When the studio demanded that the script be scrubbed of racial slurs, or that the townsfolk be made more innocent, Wilder fiercely opposed them. His resistance was what made the studio hesitate. After the success of The Producers, Wilder's voice carried significant weight, enough to make executives back down. His look of understanding became a solid anchor for Brooks, reinforcing the director's vision. For Wilder, Blazing Saddles wasn't just a comedy. It was a declaration of war. If the audience was shocked or offended, all the better. Comedy isn't meant to soothe, but to unmask social hypocrisy from the police and politicians to Hollywood itself. Would the film have maintained its raw, fierce spirit without Wilder? It's hard to say. Brooks had the vision, but Wilder transformed that vision into a fortress. In a film that broke every rule, Wilder fought a quiet but equally fierce battle. He didn't shout, he stood his ground, and thanks to him, Blazing Saddles survived intact to become one of the most daring comedies in American cinematic history. And then, just when everything seemed to be on track, a casual remark from Wilder during a break unexpectedly ignited one of the greatest films in Hollywood history. Young Frankenstein, the greatest idea in history, started with a casual remark. Music, amid the chaotic, fiery frenzy of Blazing Saddles. While everyone was still laughing, Gene Wilder quietly approached Mel Brooks. There was no script, no grand invitation. He simply blurted out a question between takes. Mel, what if Dr. Frankenstein's grandson wants to disown his family's legacy? What might have sounded like a joke was a spark. A sudden idea had ignited one that would become one of the greatest comedic masterpieces ever made, Young Frankenstein. Initially, Mel Brooks brushed it off. He was too tired and stressed from managing a chaotic project like Blazing Saddles. But Wilder didn't give up. Instead of shouting or pressuring the director, he quietly wrote a draft, patiently nurturing the idea. One day, when Brooks read the draft, he was stunned. The magical blend of satire, reverence, and vivid characters was so powerful that Brooks immediately understood this wasn't a minor idea. This was a golden one. And within days, that offhand story had transformed into a real project, and Young Frankenstein began to take shape. Without that chance moment on the set of Blazing Saddles, the world might never have known Young Frankenstein. For Mel Brooks, Wilder was no longer just an actor. He had become a co-architect, a person who helped shape the soul and rhythm of the film. Just as he had acted in Blazing Saddles, Wilder maintained his secret weapon, a sense of emotional restraint, and truth amidst a sea of laughter. It was this instinct that transformed him from someone who acted out another's vision into someone who created it. In the end, what remains from both of these masterpieces is not just the uproarious laughter, but a bold cinematic legacy. Blazing Saddles stands tall as a testament to the power of comedy when it dares to touch on things no one else would. Legacy, the legacy of Blazing Saddles. In 1970, for Mel Brooks's Western comedy Blazing Saddles was more than just a movie release. It stormed into American living rooms like a time bomb, shattering the golden rules that Hollywood had held on to for decades. With its audacity and biting satire, the film left an undeniable cultural legacy that forever changed how we view the comedy genre. Instead of avoiding sensitive topics, Blazing Saddles bravely placed issues of racism, sexuality, and social hypocrisy at the center of its story. The film was unafraid to use unsafe language, dialogue, and imagery to create a bitter laughter. This boldness sparked fierce controversy, but also paved the way for future works of black comedy and political and social satire. The film proved that laughter could be a sharp weapon of critique, making viewers laugh while confronting uncomfortable and unjust truths. Blazing Saddles was not just a parody of the Western genre, but also a revolution in storytelling. Mel Brooks broke the fourth wall, mixed historical periods, and abruptly pulled the audience out of the cinematic illusion. One of the most memorable moments is when the characters suddenly run off. The cowboy movie set burst into a movie theater and continue their fight. This unique style became an endless source of inspiration for many filmmakers who followed, like the Zucker-Abraham Zucker trio, with Airplane, and famous animated series like The Simpsons and Family Guy, which borrowed and developed in this groundbreaking narrative style. Before Blazing Saddles, Hollywood often viewed comedy as light entertainment. The film completely changed that perception, turning laughter into a powerful tool for critique and questioning. This was a major turning point, influencing even more profound social satires like Saturday Night Live and The Daily Show. Later on, we cannot forget the brilliant performances that contributed to the film's legacy. Gene Wilder's role as the alcoholic gunslinger. Waco Kid became one of the most praised comedic performances of all time, making an impression with its subtlety and contrast to the typical loud style. Mel Brooks also cemented his reputation as a master of parody and satire capable of combining absurdity and intelligence to create classic works to this day. Blazing Saddles remains a controversial work, status quo, opening a new era for comedy and leaving an indelible mark on pop culture. Music. Have you ever wondered what's truly hidden behind the glamorous facade of movies? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And remember to hit subscribe and the little bell icon so you don't miss the next stories that might make you exclaim, "No way." And if you